Hello, it's Lisa Turner here from Psychademy with your next installment for harnessing the energy of the 2012 shift. And here we are at what you need to do to get ready and signs that you're not ready. So previously we looked at signs that you are ready. So we're going to explore the chakras and how do you know if you've got any imbalances in your chakras. So with your chakras, they can either be excessive or they can be depleted. So that means either too much energy is trying to go through that chakra or not enough. Now, people sometimes get hung up on the idea of energy being a bit flaky and airy-fairy, but rather than thinking of it as energy, just think of it as a personality aspect. So that aspect of your personality is either functioning too much or not enough. So we'll start with excessive, where at the level of the base chakra, the first chakra, there's too much activity going on. So somebody with an excessive first chakra will be egotistic, domineering. It's almost like they're an offense waiting to be taken. You know that sort of person where you say, "You look nice today," and they go, "What do you mean by that?" And it's like, "Well, I thought I was giving you a compliment." So they're kind of just waiting to take offense at something. They're often greedy, jealous, avaricious, and they hoard things, so they're a hoarder. They're addicted to wealth, but often without ever really enjoying it. They become overly concerned with illusion and even delusional. They're often very angry and have a lot of anger, which is often to mask a fear that's underneath, which comes from a depleted first chakra. They cling to security and often they're overweight. Then if somebody has a depleted first chakra, they're often fearful, insecure, they've got low self-esteem and low self-worth. They often perceive threats to survival where there actually aren't any. So this is where you almost get a sense of paranoia sneaking in. They lack confidence, they're often depressed, they often experience lack of either money or time or both, and especially for themselves. They're often indecisive, they lack direction, they follow orders without question, but they can't give orders. In fact, they don't even know what orders to give. If they were asked to give some orders, they just wouldn't know what to do. They're confused, vague, a bit spaced out, and they have scattered thoughts. They're often underweight or just physically weak. They can be self-destructive or even suicidal, but sometimes this is unconsciously, so it's through things like eating disorders, smoking, or doing other physically damaging pursuits. Even things like taking drugs is an aspect of self-destructive, depleted first chakra activity. Each chakra has its own special kinds of limiting beliefs associated with it. And with the first chakra, you have limiting beliefs like, I'm not worthy, I'm worthless, I don't matter, I'm no one, I'm nobody, I'm not important. Then we move up to the second chakra. So if the second chakra is excessive, this person tends to be emotional and have emotional overreactions. They might be aggressive, superstitious, jealous, often manipulative. They get caught up in the illusion as well. They're often obsessed with their appearance, overindulgent and self-serving. They're often clairsentient, but unable to distinguish between their own feelings and those of others. They're obsessed with thoughts of sex. They often see people as sex objects and they require frequent sexual gratification, but often without ever really enjoying it. So it's like just, they want to orgasm as quickly as possible, but without ever really experiencing that sense of connection and real pleasure in the act. They're often continuously pursuing pleasure, not just sex, but generally pursuing pleasure, but again, without ever really experiencing it or enjoying it. When it's depleted, the second chakra leads to the inability to feel any emotions. They might be shy or timid or immobilized by fear. They might be rigid, resistant to change, unable to open to new experiences. They're often oversensitive. They avoid pleasure and often self-negating. Then emotionally numb, resentful and guilty all at the same time. They're distrustful and also clinging. They often have strong feelings of guilt and shame around sex and their sexuality. They have difficulty conceiving or achieving orgasm, and they're often frigid or impotent. They experience all emotions. So the limiting beliefs associated with the second chakra are that all emotions are painful. I never get what I want. I don't deserve things. I don't deserve to be liked. It's not possible to have what I want. Change is bad. I can't cope with change. I don't get what I want. And nobody likes me. Oh dear. Let me move up to the third chakra. So if the third chakra is excessive, this is where you have somebody who's got a lot of power and they use their power and their will. They see everything as a challenge or a test or a battle to be taken on. They're often ruthless and ruthlessly ambitious. Judgmental, perfectionist, workaholic. They're often overly intellectual, rationalizing. Things have to be very logical, but to an over extent. So they have no room for intuition or emotions, somebody who's excessive in the third chakra. They're often overly controlling and a control freak. Who knows some of those? They can be very defensive, constant need to prove themselves. They get into petty power struggles. They're adrenaline addicts or adrenaline junkies. They create situations with justifiable anger, and they resent authority over them, and they often complain and test others. If someone with a depleted third chakra will experience lack of self-worth, lack of confidence. They'll be overly concerned with appearances and afraid of being alone. They're often jealous, distrustful, insecure, confused. They have lack of focus, low achievers. They're unable to finish projects. So they start things, but they just don't have the discipline to follow through. They're unreliable, and they're unreliable because they're unable to say no. So they say yes to everything, and then they're unable to follow through on everything that they've agreed to. So they become unreliable. Again, these people are weak-willed, and they don't stand up for themselves. They can't assert themselves. They allow others to take advantage of them, and they often feel frustrated at having to do things they don't want to do. And that's because they say yes to everything, they can't say no, and then they get themselves in this situation of they have to do things. And they often have martyrish behavior. The limiting beliefs that are associated with the third chakra are limiting beliefs like, I have to do everything, no one else can do it right, or the opposite, which is I can't do it, nothing happens unless I do it, I can't make anything happen, I can't do anything right is another one. So we're moving up to the fourth chakra, the heart chakra. And this is where somebody will, if it's excessive, they'll just give too much, and that breeds resentment and again that martyrish behavior. They often ignore their own needs and their core self. They get into codependent relationships or become codependent. They're overly sentimental and melodramatic. They over-empathize with the suffering of others. So these are the ones that are in floods of tears over the children in need appeal or something like that, but really, really feeling it at a deep core level. If it's depleted, they experience depression, isolation. They fear intimacy. They fear a deep connection to somebody. They're unable to see the good in others, and they're unable to receive love without the suspicion of, well, what do they want from me? You know, if they're giving me something, what do they want? They don't love me really. They just want me for blah. They're often very self-pitying and doing poor me. They can be mean-spirited, but this can be masked by they give a lot, but then they kind of expect things in return, so they generate a lot of bitterness inside. They have difficulty asking for what they want, and because often they're terrified of rejection, and they have a need for constant reassurance. The fourth chakra limiting beliefs are things like nobody loves me, I'm not lovable, love hurts, I can't love anyone, or he or she will leave me. So they have a lot of limiting beliefs around being abandoned. So next time we're going to look at the higher chakras, the chakras that are opening up in society now and next. So that's the throat chakra, the third eye, and the crown. But if you're ready to start right now to discover how you can harness the energy of the 2012 shift, go to www.2012EnergyShift.com/course. Bye for now.